Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and this might be the most important video that you watch all season long. If you're sitting there right now panicking about your team, panicking about specific players, let's take a step back and let's calm down, because you really need to understand that, guess what? This happens every single year. Every year we start off the season and look at several different guys and say, man, they are not who we hope they would be. And by the time we get to the end of the season, everything is A-okay. Now, if you find yourself in that predicament right now, like those of you that have asked in the comments if you should drop Derrick Henry, no, you're not dropping Derrick Henry. Don't even think about that. Get that thought out of your mind. But we got to understand what players are off to slow starts, which one of those slow starts are real, and which one of those guys are going to take it and turn it around and get to the point where by the end of the season, they're humming on all cylinders. We are in the playoffs and we are winning fantasy championship leagues. Now, there are several guys that are off to slow starts this year. But what about last season? The 2021 wide receiver finish, the top 10 wide receivers at the position: Kupp, Samuel, Adams, Jefferson, Chase Hill, Diggs, Evans, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams. These were the top 10 guys at the position. And if you had them on your roster at the end of the year, you were probably in really, really good shape. But to begin the year, if you had some of these guys, you were probably panicking a little bit. In fact, in 2021, the start that these guys had, Kupp and Samuel, were just fine. But look at that. Davante Adams, wide receiver 31. Barely a wide receiver 2. Justin Jefferson, same boat, wide receiver 28. Ja'Marr Chase, Tyreek Hill, they were fine. I mean, Chase was like a 6th-round pick for some of you, so wide receiver 14 was great. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 29. Mike Evans, wide receiver 26. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 23. All of these guys were in a position that they were probably hurting you more than helping you at the beginning of 2021. I mean, we've got 5 guys listed right here that were outside even being barely wide receiver 2s. And that hurts. They were more like wide receiver 3s. And that's what we don't need. Okay, if you spend an early round pick on a guy that's going to be your wide receiver 1, we don't want him to be a wide receiver 3 because he doesn't have enough upside. But all these guys finished fine. All these guys were inside the top 10. So, how many of you last year owned one of these players and then said, nah, I'm out, and just tossed him to the side? I'm willing to bet there's a few of you out there that did. But for those of you that waited it out, used the waiver wire, got through those tough weeks to start, you probably won fantasy championships. Now, maybe the running back position was difficult for you as well. Back in 2021, the top 10 running backs: JT, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, and Najee Harris, James Conner, Zeke, Leonard Fournette, Alvin Kamara, Cordero Patterson, and Antonio Gibson. Now, some of these guys were being drafted in, some later rounds and didn't really matter. But if you had gotten them for some reason and were relying on them, they weren't helping you out that much either. In fact, Jonathan Taylor was a running back 27 to start the year. Jonathan Taylor was on benches to start the season. Benches. Does that sound like anybody right now that after 2 weeks you were like, I'm benching Jonathan Taylor because he's just not getting the points that I need? Does that sound like any of the running backs that are off to a slow start right now? Austin Eckler and Joe Mixon were fine. They were in the top 10. But then Najee Harris was all the way back at RB22. James Conner was RB55. I mean, James Conner, if you drafted him last season, you probably dropped him after the first couple of weeks. Zeke was an RB24. Leonard Fournette was RB33. Alvin Kamara was RB24. Antonio Gibson was RB29. All of these guys that you might have been relying on were not helping you at all. Like I mentioned with Jonathan Taylor, you probably had him on your bench going into week 3. Maybe the same thing for Antonio Gibson. Alvin Kamara, maybe you were starting him. I don't know. But again, you drafted some of these guys really early on, and you were relying on them to be fantasy producers. And even though the year didn't start that great, by the end of the season, you were playing for fantasy championships. Excuse me. You're playing for fantasy championships. That's what matters. It's not always how we start, it's how we end. And even if we start slow, as long as we start picking up speed over the next several weeks, we're fine. It's laws of average. Guys that typically have good seasons, yeah, they might not be having great seasons now, but just expect how much more you're going to get down the stretch. So who are guys that are starting slow right now? Who bounces back? Well, I've even color-coded guys for you. Austin Ekeler, Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook are in green. I feel comfortable saying that these guys are definitely going to be okay. Austin Ekeler coming off a game in which he had 10 targets. Austin Ekeler's big problem right now is he's getting the touches, but he's only averaging like 3.5 yards per carry. That will get better. Leonard Fournette, his entire team feels like it's been banged up. Lots of wide receiver injuries. As soon as we get guys healthy and you can't stack the box, Leonard Fournette is going to get going. Dalvin Cook is in a brand new offense that has thrown the ball quite a bit. He's going to get going. I'm fine with those guys. Najee Harris, yes, a bounce back game in week 3. Offensive line still not great. Mitchell Trubisky, I don't know how much long he's going to be the starter for, but doesn't need to be very much longer, that's for sure. And the offense is just kind of sputtering right now. We had concerns about him at the beginning of the year, and I haven't seen anything in the offense to show me that it's going to get better. So he could pick up speed, but again, I'm just a little bit more concerned about him. Derrick Henry, I'm also concerned about. The offensive weapons there, Robert Woods and obviously Treylon Burks, they've had some injuries that they're coming off of. Obviously, Robert Woods coming off the ACL last year. Treylon Burks was banged up throughout the course of the preseason. He's back out there. It's going to take them a little bit of time to get going. They're having injuries on the offensive line. Sounds like they've lost Taylor Lewan for the season. Those are all issues. So Derrick Henry, I love Derrick Henry, he's going to get the volume. Yeah, I am a little bit concerned that maybe the bounce back we get from him isn't nearly as high as it would be from some other guys. I'm really concerned about Ezekiel Elliott. I would have put his name in red, but obviously I can't because the box is in red, so I put it in black instead. Really worried about Zeke. Tons of offensive line injuries. Dak Prescott's now injured. Michael Gallup seems to be on the way back, but even if he is back this week, how healthy is he really? And is Cooper Rush going to get it done? When does Dak Prescott come back? Tony Pollard is still there. I think that there's more things working against Ezekiel Elliott right now. For me, Zeke is more of a guy that if I look at, I say, I'm going to rely on him as my RB2 at best the rest of the season. If you're relying on him as your RB1, you're probably in some trouble. Deebo Samuel, Mike Williams, Mike Evans. These guys, these wide receivers, I've got no issues with bouncing back as well. Mike Williams had a much better game this past week. There's a lot of people that feel like the offense with Jimmy G is going to look a lot better than it did with Trey Lance, but keep in mind, Trey Lance played through a monsoon in the first week and then got injured early in the second week. We can't take what happened this year into much account for Trey Lance. But with Deebo Samuel, we know what we get with Jimmy G. So maybe there is a little bit of a safer feeling knowing that, hey, we've seen these guys work together before. We know what's going to happen. Mike Evans, again, everyone's been injured. He's going to be suspended heading into week 3. But once he gets back, I think he's going to end up being just fine. I mean, in week 2, people talk about the Lattimore situation. He had 60 receiving yards on only 3 catches when he was ejected. Are you telling me that you don't think he couldn't have gotten to 100 yards that game? Absolutely he could have if he'd been in the entire time. Juju Smith-Schuster, if you are a member here on the channel, you've probably already listened to me talk about Juju and kind of go through the process. I did a breakdown video on him about a week or so ago and kind of went through everything I saw in video, and I think Juju is absolutely going to bounce back. The one thing that I saw in the video is just that relationship with Patrick Mahomes isn't really there yet. When Patrick Mahomes looks out, he's not really looking at Juju first. He's looking at Travis Kelce, obviously. They're going to start getting Juju more involved. I do think he's going to be bouncing back. Again, probably not the wide receiver 1 that we saw in Pittsburgh for so long, but I do think he's going to end up being a guy that will get plenty of volume down the stretch and be somebody that we can rely on a weekly basis. But these are all guys that are starting slow as well. And every single one of these guys could be in the same situation that we find ourselves in last year, where you maybe gave up at the beginning of the season because they weren't playing well. Let me be adamantly clear about something, Headliner Nation. If you stick with us throughout the entire season, we will win championships. We will. And I say we because we are going to be here to help you try and make the best decisions possible. We're not going to fill your team out for you. We're never going to sit here and tell you that this is the exact play that you have to do. If you ask us a question, we might say, yeah, I like this guy a little bit more. Or if you want upside, it's this guy. If you want the floor, it's this guy. If you say, I don't know, my gut tells me this guy, we're going to say follow your gut, because we're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to get you the information to help you make decisions. But believe me, a majority of you out there that are watching this video right now are making the right choices. It just hasn't come to fruition throughout 2 weeks yet. So keep working the waiver wire. Do not give up. If you are 0-2 right now, you have plenty of time. Let me tell you what's going to feel way better at the end of the season. Coming back from 0-2 to completely stomp on the necks of all of your opponents in your league. And instead of starting 2-0 and running it to the very end. That championship where you battled back from 0-2 is going to be that much sweeter, because your league mates are going to be like, this dude didn't give up. Keep grinding. Keep watching. Keep working the waiver wire. Make some trades. Stay confident in yourself. And at the end of the season, you're going to be coming into the comments. You're going to be saying, Kyle, I won myself a fantasy championship. If you're not fired up right now, then I don't know what gets you fired up. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. If you're willing and able, join the membership tiers below and become a member, getting some extra perks and things. Link up with our Discord. Come chat with us over there. Get extra membership content, including flex rankings and everything else. Ladies and gentlemen, I am ready for week 3, and I hope you all are as well. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. Y'all stuck on third down. Your content's plain Jane. Headliners on top now. We gonna move and change. Podcast off the rip. Draft guide, so legit. Fantasy world, our game tight. You know we about that Chubb life. Stuck in a rut and you need some motivation. Head to the channel for this Headliner Nation.
I'm a headliner.